Hello, aviators, and welcome to a new session that is Boeing or Airbus. Now, this session is about these two aircraft manufacturers only. That is because these two are the most sold aircrafts and most used aircrafts in the world. So, we will be going through about these two manufacturers. Now, this is important because both of these aircrafts look very similar when parked beside each other. So, it gets really difficult for you to differentiate or to distinguish between each of them, and sometimes it gets very confusing which aircraft is of which manufacturer. So to just clear up that confusion, we'll go ahead with the session, and this will give you a better picture or a better clarity on how to differentiate between two of these manufacturers and their designing. So to start with, we will go ahead with the nose section of the aircraft, then we'll move to the cockpit windows, then the tail, which is the land vertical stabilizer. You can watch the aircraft parts video, which will explain you about these parts of the aircraft, and it will give you clarity about which part I'm talking about. And then the landing gear of the aircraft, which is the height of it, and then at last is the engine intake. All right, so we'll start with the nose section of the aircraft. And to be clear, here I'll be differentiating the two top models which are sold by these manufacturers. One being of 737, that is of the Boeing, and the other is A320, that is of the Airbus. Okay, so since these two are the most sold and the most used aircraft across the world, we will go ahead with the comparison with these two. So we'll start with the nose section. As you can see on the left side of the video here, we have the Boeing 737. Now the Boeing 737 nose, if you may notice, it is a pointed nose. Okay, and of the Airbus, if you can see, it is a dolphin shaped inspired designing. Okay, now why I'm saying dolphin shaped is because, first of all, it looks, if you have seen a dolphin and then you just see this aircraft or Airbus aircraft, it looks very similar. As you can see, it is rounded in shape, the Airbus nose, as well as the shape of the dolphin nose is also quite rounded. So there is a lot of similarity, or I would say the Airbus manufacturer is inspired by the aerodynamics of the dolphin. Okay, so this is the first comparison, that is Boeing nose being a pointed nose and an Airbus nose being a rounded nose, or you can say a dolphin shaped nose or dolphin inspired aerodynamics. Okay, if you can see in this image as well, similarly here it is a pointed nose, here it is a rounded nose. Okay, next we'll go to the cockpit windows. The cockpit windows are in the cockpit, and it gives a clear picture, a clear view, and helps the view for the pilots. All right, so now if you can see in the Boeing, the cockpit windows are, the bottom of the cockpit windows is V-shaped. Here if you can notice, this is a V-shaped bottom of the cockpit window, whereas here if you may see, this is the flattened shaped. Okay, here it is a flat shaped cockpit window. And why I'm saying it is parallel to the fuselage is, this is the fuselage of the aircraft, or you can say the body of the aircraft, and as you may see, this and this lines run along, so it is parallel in shape. Okay, whereas here in the Boeing it is V-shaped. Right, so as you can see here, similarly the V-shaped in the Boeing and the flattened one in the Airbus. This is a very genuine and very easily identifying note over here. If you can just go by viewing the cockpit windows, you can get a clear picture of which aircraft or which manufacturer is it of. Okay, next we'll come to the tail section, that is the vertical stabilizer. This is the vertical stabilizer of the aircraft, as well as here the red portion is the vertical stabilizer of the aircraft. And here if you may see, this is the tail section. Now the tail section and the vertical stabilizer has quite a bit of a distance, or say a few feet of distance between each other. Okay, and here there is not much of the distance, so you can say the vertical stabilizer ends a few feet away from the tail section, whereas in Boeing aircraft, the vertical stabilizer ends very close to the tail section. Okay, as you may see over here, that is the first comparison, the distance. All right. Okay, the distance here and the distance here is very different compared. And the next one to identify is the shape of the vertical stabilizer. The bottom shape of the vertical stabilizer is curved over here, whereas here if you can see the bottom shape of the vertical stabilizer in a Boeing is extended. Here you may see this is extension of the vertical stabilizer. Here it is just curved and it is finished. Okay. Next is the landing gear height. Now the landing gear height of Airbus is taller. Now I'm saying landing gear, this is the landing gear. Okay, this is called as a nose landing gear, and then there is a main landing gear. But all the landing gears, both of them are of the same height. Now here if you may see, the height is taller. Here the height is shorter. Okay, so the Boeing 737 landing gear is shorter and the Airbus landing gear is taller. Now why that difference is clearly that Boeing they made it or they designed it in such a way that the cargo section was very accessible to the ground level, so they used to take the baggages and one person used to be inside the cargo section. Okay, all right, so he used to pass on the bags from the ground and the other person would be in the cargo section. He would collect it and he would arrange it in the cargo section. But then later on, as the technology improved, now they have ramps to pass on the baggages, and there is also everything is electronic. So the ground staff just has to place the bags on the ramp and they are automatically passed on into the cargo section, and there would be another staff who would collect it and arrange it inside. Okay, so that is the landing gear height. As you may see over here in the image, this is the Boeing 737 and here this is the Airbus 320. Next we'll go to the difference in the shape of the engine intake. Now this is a Airbus 320 engine and this is a Boeing 737 engine. If you can see in the comparison, the Airbus 320 engine is exactly round in shape, whereas the Boeing is a little squashed in the bottom. That is due to the height. Now as we discussed in the previous point, the height of the Airbus 320 is taller, but Boeing 737 is shorter. So here they had to squash it a little bit in the designing so that there would be a little more ground clearance. Okay, as you can see in the image over here, this is a 320 perfectly round. This is the 737 a little squashed. See, as you can see, it's just like a bottle if it is squashed. Okay, this is how it looked, little squashed in here, right? That is just for the sake of ground clearance, improving the ground clearance. This is a longer view. Okay, here and here. Okay, so after going through these points, I would want you to practice this. Now how you would practice is go and visit the airport nearest to you, have spend some time over there, look at the aircrafts which are parked over there, and by these points what we have discussed, identify and these differences in them, and that will help you a lot for your future in aviation. If you're going for an interview, it will give you a boost in your confidence that you already know which aircraft looks like what, and that will give an advantage over the other candidates. Okay, as well as from the knowledge point of view, it is very good to know these points. Okay, all right, aviators, so we'll get back in the next session and we'll have a new topic to discuss. Until then, thank you and looking forward for the next session. Thanks a lot.